All right. What we always want to do at the end of the year is set your marketing calendar. You always set your marketing calendar at the end of the year and you do it for the full year. And then you modify as necessary, looking at your statistics, what's working, what needs to be tweaked, what do you need to do more of. But you always set your marketing calendar for the next year come December. You don't One thing you don't do is not do a marketing calendar and then just wing it. Just, try this and try this and get sold on this and get sold on this. So you don't want to do that. You want to have your systems in place. And then more and more, you'll learn what works when you keep your stats. Your knowledge and skill will get better. You'll learn what works. You'll learn what gives you a better return on investment. And every year, your marketing calendar should get better and better. Your return on investment should get better. Your quality of patients should get better just because you're paying attention to and you're quantifying what works. That's why. So having said that, let me just go into a few points about the marketing calendar. Number one, you have to make it for the whole year. Number one, you want it visual. One of the big problems that I've seen is doctors put a marketing calendar like in Google Calendar or something like that, and they never look at it. You have to look at your marketing calendar every day. So I always recommend getting a one of the dry erase calendars from Office Depot for the year. They have calendars for the year. Pick it up for the year, get a dry erase marker so you can write on there. And what I always made my clients do is it was required to be put right in front of them. So if their computer was here, it had to be here. They had to see it every day. Now, you don't want patients to see it. So if somehow patients have access to your room, then somehow you want to make it where it can be covered. I've had doctors put it behind doors where they can just open the doors and close the doors, or even, draw a curtain over it. That's not something you want patients to see. But you definitely want and need to see your marketing calendar every day. And remember, every staff meeting, you go over the marketing events. You go over the last month's event, how well it went. Do you need to get better or worse? What do you need to do? Do you need to train more? Do you need to give bonus? Do you need to move somebody out from that position because they're just not getting it? And then you're going over the present marketing, what's happening right now, reviewing it, role playing, et cetera. And then you're going to pay attention to next month because sometimes it takes a little bit more to get things set up, takes a little time to get set up for some marketing events. So we're always going to be paying attention to three things. How'd the last one do? Exactly where we're at now, what's going on, and then what do we need to do now for next month? Is there anything we need to do to get ready for next month? Okay. And then there's some of the other basic rules with marketing is you want to do one major event every 2 weeks. That's what you want to do. You don't want to, you definitely do not want to be doing like a one major event, like, a health fair, and then you do nothing. You'll get, several patients in and then you'll lose most of them. Because remember, it's not good to get a lot of new patients fast. You want periodic patients. You want them spread out. You want them coming in regularly and periodically is what you want. You don't want big events where they all come in at once and then you lose them all. And then you're not doing any marketing events again. And so you gotta practice. It's very unstable. It's going up and down and up and down. And that's real common. A lot of doctors will put the money and time into marketing to get patients. They don't have any other systems in place. And then they'll lose a certain amount of them. And then when those are kind of filtering out, they didn't do anything. There's no other marketing. And then they rush forward and, pay for another ad or something. And they're constantly going up and down. And you want nothing to do with that. You want stability. So you want to do a marketing event every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. Now, the first marketing events you put into your calendar are the marketing events that you do not control the dates. So what would be some common marketing events that you would not control the dates. Well, if you're doing the monthly and office promotion, you don't control those dates. You don't control Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. You don't control those dates. So the very first thing you have to put in your calendar are the marketing events, the dates that because you can't move them around. So the fixed date marketing events, you've got to go in and put them in first. Okay. All right. And then from there, then you start spacing out. Now you'll be able to look at, so your marketing calendar starts filling up, and then you can start putting in specific events. Now you're going to look at the different marketing events there are, because remember, you can't do 101 marketing events. So again, I'm going to pull it up here in just a second. What are the marketing events that give the greatest return and the greatest return on investment? And remember, it's kind of inversely proportional. The more knowledge and skill you have, the more effective the marketing is and the higher quality of patients. The less knowledge and skill that you apply, the more money, it's not going to be as effective, and you're going to have to spend money. And that's where it's at. And sometimes, and that's why you have to decide where you're at. And you have to decide where you're at and make these choices. You know, some doctors are just dead set on not doing a new patient orientation. Well, now you got to go down the food chain. What will you be willing to do that's most effective, gives the greatest return on investment, that costs the least amount of money? See? And if you're not willing to do the next thing, then you got to keep going down the food chain until you are willing to do something. Because you do have to do marketing with only 8% utilization in chiropractic. You definitely have to do marketing. Generally, the only market forces you'll get with new patients, it's typically between 2, 4, and 6 new patients a month, just from being in a location with an internet, with an online presence. You don't have an online presence, you're not even going to get your share of market forces. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at all the categories first, and then you've got to make a decision what you're going to do with your marketing. So let me go ahead and bring it up here, do a screen share, and let's bring it up. So let me do this first. Okay, I'm going to do this. And okay. All right, so what are some of the main things that we're going to be paying attention to? Remember, you have limited time and money. So 5 main marketing considerations. We're always going to pay attention to the cost, the labor, the time involved, the skill involved, and the return on investment. That's what we're going to be paying attention to. And then, of course, what's the goal? It's to maximize your return on investment, minimize costs, leverage labor and time. And obviously, the more you learn educational sales, the greater your opportunities are going to be. You're going to look, what is the greatest return on investment? Remember, we talk about this all the time. It's your sign. And we talk separately about what creates a more effective versus least effective sign. But the sign is not because you get a lot of patients fast. It's because you buy it once and it sits out there for 20, 30 years. So that's always typically the number one return on investment. And there's definitely ways to increase the effectiveness of your sign, but that's not the purpose of what we're doing here. So first, marketing categories. So obviously, when you do marketing, you always want to pay attention to where your target market is going first. Now, remember, when you remember about the S-curve of economics, there's only 2 times you can have a business and not have to worry about marketing and get plenty of business. Number 1 is if you're the only supplier of that product or service. Well, everybody's got to buy from you. Now that generally happens when people start a product or service. That's usually the only time that happens. Okay, Pretty much isn't going to happen in chiropractic. It did happen with one of my offices. I saw a county next door that had a population of 7,000 and there was no chiropractors. It was a rural county. There was no chiropractors in the county, and the little county hub, the little city was only had a population of 750. It was all agricultural. But I knew that 8% of those people were getting chiropractic care every year. And so where did I know they had to go out of the area? So I knew if I put an office there, I was immediately going to get the 8%. I wasn't going to get all 8% because it's the 80-20 rule. There's the 3% that'll stay with, drive longer and stay with the people they were at. But there's the 80% that they're going to come right there because remember, location is the second highest reason that people will go to a chiropractor. They'll go to somebody in their backyard before they drive 20 or 50 miles away. So I already knew I was going to capture that market. And we did. Within 6 weeks, it went up over 100 patient visits a week. Within 3 months, we went over 150 patient visits a week. And the town population was 750. But that doesn't exist very many places. That was the only place in 20, I'm in 22 states that I've ever seen something like that. Although I did open an office for a doctor, which was very unusual. We found his geographic area and there was absolutely no chiropractors. And it was a high density county. And that little suburb, that key word, there was no chiropractors and there was a population of about 23,000 and there was no chiropractors. He was automatically going to get all the patients from the internet because he was the only chiropractor that was going to be in that city location. And remember, 75% of the people pick based on location. So he was automatically going to get a significant portion of the 8%ers just because there was no other chiropractor in that 23,000 mile radius base that could use that keyword, that suburb keyword. So that worked out. These are unusual situations. Usually that's not the case. Usually when you go somewhere, there's other chiropractors around. So again, if you have a lot of other chiropractors around, you're going to just get a lot less of that 8%. Everybody just competes with them. And then how much are they competing? How much internet marketing are they competing to get that 8%? Okay. So we always do want to pay attention where the patients, the 8% go first, because there's already a perceived need. Those are some of the easiest patients to get, some of the lowest cost, easiest. You can have less knowledge or skill and get those patients. That's the good news. The bad news is there's not a lot. You're just trying to get more than your neighbor. That's all you're trying to do. So instead of getting maybe one a week, you're trying to get 2 or 3 a week, something like that. Okay, so where do patients go first? They always go and talk to their family members first. That's why we do the patient video newsletter. And that's why I say there you should be sending out to your patients a minimum once a week with your promotions on problem solutions, gateway problem solutions. And again, I'm not going into the details of how to do all this marketing. The purpose of what we're trying to do is pick and choose for your marketing calendar. Now that's the first place everybody goes. So those are going to be higher quality patients. It's not going to cost any money. It'll take a little bit of time. But it's the first place everybody goes. So I always recommend that gets done, that there's content going out and as a minimum once a week based on the gateways, problem solution, and you help with an offer to come in. So it has to be a system. Remember, when we talk about systems, what do you have to have? You have to have a designated person, a designated place, a designated time, a designated amount. You got to have a system or it doesn't get done. And then you have to quantify it. Everything has to be, and you look at the quantification every week in the staff meeting. That tells you if you need to bonus them, they need more training, or you've trained enough and they just can't get it. They're just not good at doing that particular task. So you've got to make that decision. Okay. Now, remember, one of the first things that you have to do, and we'll cover this more next week, is you've got to decide how much revenue you want to make. So, and why you want to make it. So, the very first thing is to determine what you want in life. And then all we do is we're going to reverse engineer that. Go, okay, if you want to make $500,000 a year and your overhead's 50%, so you're going to have to collect $1,000,000. And then we'll look at your dollar per visit. Let's say it's 50. We'll divide 50 into $1,000,000. That'll give us the number of patient visits that we'll need. We'll divide that into your patient retention. What patient retention are you shooting for? Remember, you should always have your numbers you're shooting for, always. When you don't, you get market forces. If you haven't picked a number of new patients that you expect every month, you'll always get less. When you have not picked your patient retention number, you will always get less. Market forces will never give you more. You have to pick what you want, and then you have to learn how to go get it. And the great news about this profession, it's pretty easy to do because 92% of the population has a chiropractic problem. They're just not looking for a chiropractor. So there's a huge opportunity to create way more business than you physically can handle if you're willing to increase your knowledge, your skill level, and actually do something. If you're not, you won't. You're stuck. You're going to be stuck with the 8%. And that's what makes the differences in practices. All practices are personality based. How much does the doctor know? His knowledge and skill and his motivation. Because the market's the same everywhere. There's tons of chiropractic patients everywhere that they're not looking for a chiropractor. So if you have a doctor who's not willing to do it, not willing to learn it, not willing to apply it, not motivated to do it, he gets stuck with market forces. Very few patients, and then they don't want to come in. So you have to have a number. You have to have a belief. Why do you want that number? So that's how you find out the number of new patients you need. You go, well, how much money do you want to make? You don't just go in here and not have an idea of how much money you want to make or why you want to make it. And you got to have good reasons why you want to make it, or you won't do it. I say it all the time when I talk to doctors. They go, oh, I'd like to make $1,000,000 a year. And I test them. And I just test them just to see where they're at. And I'll say, well, we can do that, but you'll have to work Saturday mornings for about 6 months. Are you willing to do that? Every doctor I've done that with is bailed out. I said, no. What did that tell me? The $1,000,000 that they were wanting was bullshit. They were lying to themselves. And that's when I turned to them. I said, okay, now let's get real. What are you willing to do to get to what you want? Okay. So that's how you find out the number of new patients. Take your dollar per visit into your total, the total money into your $1,000,000 or whatever. In this case, say you want to make 500, you got a 50% overhead, and it's your dollar per visit. It's 50. Divide 50 into 1,000,000. That gives you your patient visits. Now you need to know your patient visit average. This is how big it. This is when and how big it becomes. Having a decent patient retention. You got a low patient retention, you're going to need a lot of new patients. You're going to have to spend a lot more time and money and effort. You got a pretty good patient. I mean, there's a difference. If your patient retention is 24 and somebody else's is 12, the person that is 12 has to get twice as many new patients to make the same amount of money. See? So that patient retention is huge relative to everything else you do. It's a domino effect. That's why we spend so much time and energy on patient retention, increasing communication skills. Everything in that chiropractic practice starts with knowing how to keep patients. Okay, so that's how you get the number of new patients you want to make your money. Then you go, okay, divide that into 52 weeks. How many new patients a week is that? And that's how you come up. Then you go, okay, I need whatever, 5 new patients a week or 10 new patients a week at $50 per visit. Let's just say it's 10. Okay. You go, okay, I need 10 new patients a week. to make collect $1 million a year with my patient overhead, with my dollar per visit. And now you go, okay, where am I going to get the 10 new patients a week? Now is when we come to the marketing calendar and start finding the systems that are going to create the 10 new patients a week. You have to know your numbers. You have to make decisions on what you want in your practice. Money decisions, overhead decisions, dollar per visit decisions, patient retention decisions, new patients. These are all numbers you have to make decisions on, and you have to be proactive to know how to go after and get it. Otherwise, you will not. 8% is a small number. It's a very small number. There's a lot of chiropractors seeing less than 60 visits a week. A lot. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the skill. They don't have the motivation. They're getting market forces. There you go. That's how it works. It's either wide open or it's closed down. You're the one that gets to choose. When I didn't know anything, I fell on my face and went broke. I didn't know anything. Got out of school, didn't know how to keep a patient, didn't know how to talk to a patient, didn't know how to get a patient, fell on my face and went broke. Fortunately, I went in and learned from somebody. I was actually trained in the business, not the chiropractic part. And so when I left there and started a practice, I went from 0 to 100 patient visits a week in 6 weeks and profited $232,000 my first year. That was the difference. Knowledge and skill, and I acted on it. In one way, I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the skill. I went broke. When I had the knowledge and skill and I opened, I became rich. That's the difference it makes. The market's out there. Whether you know how or are willing to go after it, it's totally up to you. This is a personality-driven business. I say it all the time. If you didn't want to do any marketing, you should have not gotten into chiropractic. You should have gotten into McDonald's, a Subway sandwich place, and just let advertising take care of everything. That's not true with chiropractic. It's totally dependent on the doctor in that office. So that's why you always see a doctor who takes over a practice and his patient, usually you see it the other way around, a doctor who buys a practice and he's terrible at patient retention. And let's say the old doctor is at 18 and the new doctor comes in and he's at, let's just cut it in half and say 9. It's usually worse than that. The practice goes down in half because it has nothing to do with the practice. It has to do with the knowledge and skill of the doctor. And by the way, it happens the other way too. When I buy a diamond in the rough and my patient retention is 28 and I buy a practice and it's got 12. Well, guess what? I know I'm going to more than double the practice within 90 days just because of my skill level. Without any more new business, the practice is going to double. That's how big a difference. That's why it's so important to develop your skill and knowledge. That's what determines your success in chiropractic, your skill and knowledge, and whether you're willing to do it or not. It's out there. The market's out there. You just have to know how to go get it because it's certainly not looking for you. Okay. So patient video newsletter. So we pay attention to these. Now you've got to decide whether you're going to do these or not. You got to fill your calendar. So patient video newsletter, we do that because it's the first place patients go. There's reactivations, circle of influence. 2% of them are in accidents every year. You have the highest trust factor. It doesn't cost much. It doesn't cost any money. It does take a little bit of time, but it's the time it takes is leveraged over years. So it may take you, several weeks to create videos and SEO them and put them online and all that, but they'll be up there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it helps to create that big internet influence. Because remember, we're always paying attention to not just the videos and the keywords, the SEO, we're paying attention to the backlinks and the NAP, name, address, and phone number. See, so all of it has a major confluencing factor to create this internet presence. So it would be very ignorant not to have all of these other keywords that are SEO'd properly with your NAP and your backlinks. It'd be very ignorant to not do that. You seriously hurt your internet influence. Okay, so we do insurance videos. That's the second place patients will go. So we do those. You got to decide if you're going to do them or not. And you should, if somebody Googles any insurance company with your location, boom, your video should pop right up, because that's a new patient looking for a chiropractor right there. Google for business, we go into how to do that. I'm at the point where that's a real important, and it's multifaceted. And it's not just getting reviews. There's way more to it than getting reviews. We cover how that works. This is one of the sections that I actually suggest that is delegated out, that you actually have somebody else, like one of my colleagues that actually does this full time, and that's all he does for chiropractors. Because it's a big deal being in that 3-pack in Google for chiropractor locations. A big deal. I mean, you can easily get 5-10 new patients a week from that. I've got a client that gets 10 new patients a week from his Google business profile. Now they work it. Okay, so that's definitely worth doing. And then, of course, the condition keywords, it's the same thing. You should have all the gateway conditions relative to your location, with your backlink and your NAP, name, address, and phone number. Remember, this creates this spider web effect. And then remember, when we have these videos, we syndicate them. We don't just put one video up and that's it. We take that video and we put it into a syndicator, and it goes to 20, 30, 40 different social media sites. And now they all have backlinks and naps. So it creates a massive spider web effect is what that does. So again, how much money does it cost? Time, energy, and effort. It's worth doing. It definitely takes some time. You got to learn how to do it, but they're on there forever. Those videos stay up forever. That's why you want all those keywords, all your chiropractic keywords. You want videos up for everything: SEO, backlink, NAP. And then we syndicate them all. So it's not just a 1-to-1 ratio. It gets to be a 1-to-20 ratio. I mean, it literally is like you see on New Year's, when they pop those poppers and those streamers just go everywhere. That's what happens when you syndicate. It goes everywhere. So now you have all these keywords, they're syndicated. It's like this big Spider-Man net on the internet for you and your keywords. And that's what you want. And it has the backlinks and the naps. Okay. And then we have the sign. Remember, 80% of the traffic goes by your office the same every day, 80%. And remember, those people are in accidents. 2% of them are in accidents every year. So you want a very specific message. So again, depending on, we talk about what makes a sign better, how you can maximize the effectiveness of your sign. And everything we cover separately and individually in great detail of how to do it. So that's something to pay a lot of attention to, especially if you own your own building. You definitely want to buy your own sign, and you want to put the money into it and do it right. That has messaging, all the major components that increase the effectiveness of it. But what's important is having a singular message. Like if you're going to focus on auto injuries, is make sure you have that singular message out by your sign, not just your name and phone number. And a reason for them to call. Again, we cover this separately, how to put this together. So that's it. That's where the 8% of the patients go. And my suggestion is you should be on all of them. That you should just get more of the 8% that are looking. because it's easier to get somebody who's already looking than somebody who's not looking. So my suggestion is to do them all and saturate the internet with all your condition and gateway keywords. Okay, so that's the very first marketing you should consider because it's where the 8% are going. Now, we can do a lot more to this. I'm not going to get into it right now, but we also can take those videos and put it into a syndicator, but we can also put it into a blog syndicator. So it creates a tremendous, huge influence for your keyword name and your backlinks and your NAP and AP. All of those matter. They matter. Okay, so that's the first place. Are we going to expect to get a lot of new patients out of this? A lot, no. Some, yeah. You can definitely get 5-10 new patients from this. Definitely. If you do this right, you definitely can. And the good news is, with our systems, when you know how to remember, every time we get a new patient, we expect 1.5 new patients from that new patient within 30 days. So we have the systems in place. We don't want just that patient. We want that patient plus 1.5 within 30 days. We put them through the system. So we can take 5 patients and turn them into 15. We can take 10 patients and turn them into 30 when you actually know the systems. Okay, so that's the first category. The second category is the most effective. That's when we combine circle of influence with educational sales. So remember, there's 3 types of marketing: publicity, advertising, and educational sales. Publicity and advertising only works for people who are looking to buy a product or service. So that will not work for the 92%. It will work for the 8%. Educational sales is the only system that works for the 92%, the 3 out of 4 people that have a problem but aren't looking for a chiropractor. So that's the power now. But this is what starts separating the big boys from the little boys, because now we're talking about skill. You actually have to know something, and you have to have the ability to do it. So you got to have knowledge, you got to have skill, and you got to have confrontation and a little bit of conviction. And there's a lot of chiropractors that don't have that combination. They can't do it. They're too timid to do it. Well, that's the thing that works the best. That's what gets the most business. So you've got to decide where you're at in that spectrum. And at some point, you got to be real with yourself. If you haven't, if you've been studying it for a year and you haven't been doing it, you're not going to do it. You just need to check it off your list and go down the list to something you will do. That's reality. It's not reality to think you've been studying it for a year, haven't been doing it for a year, but oh yeah, next year we'll go ahead and do it. No, next year you won't do it also. You've got to learn to be a good manager. You've got to be logical. You got to have common sense. You've got to be a good manager. And that includes managing yourself. Okay, so always the highest circle of influence is under the same roof. Spouse, kid, anybody that's under the same roof, that's where you have the highest probability of getting that patient. So that's why we have the spouse referral program. Every new patient, that's what that's about. Now you don't have to use an educational sales system. You could use advertising for it, but you just decrease the effectiveness of it. But remember, it's still better to do advertising than to do nothing at all. The worst thing you could do is nothing at all. It's the worst thing you could do. Then there's the Kids Day. That's one of the best marketing events because it's high emotional content. If you enjoy kids, I strongly recommend you learn how to do our educational sales Kids Day, where we check all our new patients' kids the next month. And that's a whole system. Again, that takes knowledge and skill how to do that. But that's a real, you want to increase your practice 20, 25% fast, start doing Kids Day. Start doing Kids Day. Proactive referrals. So knowing how to create a referral. So what does that take? Does it take skill? Yes. Does it take training? Yes. Does it take conviction? Yes. Does it take confrontation? Yes. Again, if you don't have those, you're not going to be able to do it. And probably if you've already known about it and you haven't been doing it, then you're probably one of the doctors that has low confrontation, low conviction, low skill level. Move on to something else. You've already shown you're not willing to do that. You've got to go to what you're willing to do. You can't think of you can't say to yourself, well, yeah, I'll eventually do those three things that are very effective. And then a year later, you haven't done anything. That's just not smart. That's not even being reasonable. That's that's la la land. At some point, you got to face yourself in the mirror and go, I'm going to step up to it. I'm going to increase my conviction. I'm going to increase my confrontation. I'm going to work on myself to be better, which is very difficult. Most doctors are not willing to do that, not willing to do that at all. Or do something doesn't take as much knowledge or skill, but then again, it's not as effective. But you're better to do that than nothing. But there gets to be a point that you have to, that's one thing about training. When I trained doctors, I was their discipline. I was what was called forced discipline. They had to do it. They had to get out of their comfort zone. They had to repeat it. They had to go into repetition. They had to learn high, deep conviction. I took them through what's called confrontational exercises to increase their confrontation. They were required to go to Toastmasters to invest in themselves to be a better communicator. See? So I was the discipline. I was the stick. Did any of those doctors do that after they left? No, none of them did. I'm the one that took them to a whole nother level. Okay. Monthly in-office promotion. And that's simply a regular educational sales system with your high probability referring patients. That's all that is. And it's just tied to an annual event. But it's the same thing, the same sequence over and over. And it just spits off 2, 3, 4, 5 new patients again. All of these, that's what you're trying to do. Every 2 weeks, you just want something going on. Even some days, there's some days where you may have a day 5 spouse. You may have a guest come in, a child come in as a guest where you do an in-office activation. You may be doing a re-report where you're going to do the re-referral afterwards. And all that happened in one day. Well, that's 3 new patients in one day, just because you had the knowledge and skill to create the referral, do the in-office activation, and do the educational sales spouse referral system. See, that took knowledge and skill to do all that. And if you don't know any of that, you're 0 for 3. And chances are you're not seeing over 60 patient visits a week. You're probably down around 40 or less, because it's a skill problem. It's a skill, confrontation, motivation problem. Okay, well, in my office, I did the day 5. I got that patient. I did the re-report, got that patient, and I got the in-office activation child. I got 3 new patients that day because I had the skill, knowledge, and confrontation to do it. There you go. That's the difference. That's why I say chiropractic offices are totally personality driven. What does the doctor know, and what is he willing to do? That's it. Reactivation phone call. That doesn't take much confrontation. New patient orientation. That's tremendous. That's one of easily the top 3 new patient systems, because you already have satisfied clients. There's already high trust, high confidence, low defenses, low resistance. I mean, you're sitting literally in a high probability target market, and we have enough time. That presentation is about 20 to 30 minutes. we have enough time to put all the pieces together and we can easily find out if their spouse, their child, their mother, father has a gateway problem. We find that out in the first 3 minutes of the presentation. And then we just move through, connect all the dots, and next thing you know, they're buying the coupon to bring in their spouse, kid, or mother, father to come in for care. All because you knew educational sales. And if you didn't, you wouldn't have gotten any of them. If you didn't do the presentation at all, again, you've got nothing. So if you weren't willing to do the day 5 spouse, you're 0 for 1. If you weren't willing to do the in-office activation, you're 0 for 2. If you didn't know how, or you're not doing the referral after the report, you're 0 for 3. You don't do the new patient orientation, you're 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 or 0 for 6. That's the difference between a doctor that sees 40 visits a week or a doctor that, like me, that busts the seams out of the place, creates way more new patients than I physically can handle because I'm getting them left and right every day. All these systems I'm working, I'm getting them left and right every day. So you got the new patient orientation, which is fantastic. Great news about that. It's the same presentation that you use for a dinner presentation. And it can be any degree of trust. It can be total cold call. You'll still get new patients from total cold call just because statistically we know 8% are going to be looking for a chiropractor within the year out of the 92%. 75% of them have a chiropractic problem. So if I just am a little smarter and I pick too much to come to my dinner, people who are over 40, and they have them sign up a quick checklist if they ever have a gateway problem or have had one, I'm going to be 10 for 10 because I'm going to be smarter at it. So in other words, I position myself to win. So that's how we grew every practice. So you want to grow a practice fast? That's it. You got to learn how to do presentations. That's how you grow practices fast. In-house presentation, outside presentation. Sometimes it's a combination of some in-house people, some cold call. Even when I do a cold call, I'll still ask a VIP patient if they can come out and I'll pay for their dinner. And if I can walk them through a testimonial just to affect the trust of that audience. So I can either only try to go after the 3%ers and the 17% family members. Sometimes that'll be harder to get those numbers together. You'll get a few. And then, so you might have to be a combination thereof, some cold calls, some of your 3%ers, some of your 17%ers. And if I have to just go more to cold call, I'll at least try to invite a 3%er in and pay for their dinner to get a testimonial out of them to totally affect the trust of the audience for that presentation. I can do that. I can do this over and over. Anytime. I can do it at lunch. I can do it at dinner. I can do this over and over. And then I can cherry pick who I want in there to who has a higher likelihood or probability of having a problem. That's how we started every office. We did 2 a week until we went to 100 patient visits a week. Then we'd do 1, taper that off till the doctor saw 150 visits a week. And then he stopped doing the outside. He only did the internal stuff. And then when he brought on his first associate doctor, that was the first thing we did. We did outside. We did the new patient orientations, outside present, because that's what fills your practice fast. Matter of fact, it's not good if you're the only practitioner and you go out and you sell 10 people. You're going to have a very difficult time processing 10 people because you got to try to get them in fast. You already know time kills all deals. So you know that you got to get them in with 1 or 2 days. Well, now you'll be overwhelmed in 1 or 2 days. You won't even be able to efficiently process 10 people. See, you got to be smart about this. Personal injury presentations. Again, we just had a system every Friday. This was a system. Staff member contacted the attorneys, set me up with the attorneys. We had it on the Excel spreadsheet. She just followed the Excel spreadsheet. What contact was she on? When did she call them? What was the date and time she called them? And we already knew the information that we were going to cover. It's all right there on that Excel spreadsheet. All she did is followed up, made the code, set the appointments for me. She knew to make them every Friday at 11 o'clock before lunch. That was the rule. She could make it at another time, but it had to be verified by me. So I do my sales presentation, interact with them from 11 to 12, and I still had another hour with them to handle questions and go to lunch and handle the incidental stuff that they typically have. They typically have a lot of questions, but that's how I built my personal injury. Doesn't take a whole lot to do that. What it does take is consistency. That's what it does take. So that was the system. That was every Friday. We did it. You can do a presentation down at the courthouse. Do a continuing education presentation down at the courthouse. Remember, all the attorneys are down at the courthouse. That's why their offices are all down there, because they're constantly walking over, dealing with the courthouse. Less because of Zoom and all that, but they still got to walk over and file papers and all that stuff. So you can very easily once a month at the same location, because you always want to do the same location, same time. Anytime you do anything, you do not want to be changing it around. So if you were going to do the monthly courthouse dinner, free dinner with one continuing legal education, you'd market it. Well, they would know, hey, the first Friday of the month, there's a free dinner with continuing education hours at this restaurant right here around that they're familiar with, say that they eat at all the time or that they're familiar with. Just consistency, consistent. You'd collect their names and then you just keep marketing it. I've got one client, that's all he did. He just did presentations once a month. He averaged over 300 personal injury referrals a year. Multi-million-dollar practice. That's all he did. You got to be willing to do something, because they're certainly not going after you. They're not knocking on your door. You're a chiropractor. You got 8% utilization. If you want them knocking on your door, you should have invested in McDonald's. Quarterly dinner with CLEs. Those are gimme. You can mix those with the MRI people. Again, you got to be willing to go after it. Medical doctor presentations. We did our medical doctor presentations. We did them once a month. We focused on, we found out neuro surgeons were the best, but we targeted orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, and then of course the local urgent care centers and the general practitioners. And that's a different sales message. And we cover exactly what to say, how to say it, everything. All of these are covered. And these are systems again. This should be done. And if again, it'd be like one of my staff members. I'm teaching them what to say. They're going out with the marketing material. Basically, it's a flyer with the 3 phases of healing and the need for the different types of care and why and what causes permanent problems if they don't. So anyway, I go into much greater detail when we cover that. But that's how you start getting referrals from your local general practitioners, your urgent care centers, your emergency care rooms. And then I just, every referring case that my staff member who's doing all this, she'll get like a certain amount, she'll be rewarded just for doing it. And then if we get a referral, then I'd give her $100 for her effort. So she got something for doing it. Even if it wasn't, they didn't come in, because nobody's willing to do something for nothing. And it was a designated time. It was a designated person, a designated time. She was trained in what to say, the sales message. She was bonused to do it. She was bonused to follow up. There was a follow-up system too. There was a contact. In other words, there was a list. Remember, lists are the most important thing in your marketing. Who are you going to target? The first thing is to create the list. So we get the list of who all the local urgent care centers are and the general practitioners. And then we find out who the decision makers are there and who the doctors are, and especially the office managers. A lot of times are the decision makers. Sometimes that's who you need to speak to get the referral with these urgent care centers. So this is a whole marketing system. Again, time, effort, and energy. It's got to be on the, you got to have a designated person, a designated time, a designated place, and they have to be trained in doing it. They got to be bonused for doing it. It's a system. Everything is about systems. The systems are quantified. Every system is always quantified. Otherwise, you won't know if it's working, is it not working? Do they deserve a bonus or not? What's the return on investment? You have to quantify every system. Okay, so this is where the gold's at. But unfortunately, this is what takes knowledge and skill. You got to have some confrontation and you got to be motivated. But this is where the gold's at. Doctors that make $500,000, $1 million, $2, $3 million a year, this is what they're doing. That's where it's at. Okay, next is testimonial videos. Remember, you should be doing that once a month. We had one day a month. It was just for testimonial videos. Now, we always picked a lighter day because it takes a little more time to shoot a video. So we typically did it on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Unless we wanted to like try to get a few more, we might do them on a Monday or Wednesday morning, something like that. But we tried to get 2 or 3 testimonial videos on the gateways every time we did it. Well, if you get 3 testimonial videos once a month, that's 36. And then what I'm always trying to do is get the conditions. I want the back pain, I want the neck pain, I want the car injury. I don't want a testimonial video on how I helped the baby with asthma. I want nothing to do with that. That's going to create nothing but confusion when a patient sees that on my website. So I'm picking and choosing the neuromusculoskeletal. I want a disc patient. I want a sciatica patient. I want a tingling and numbness patient. All the gateways of chiropractic, I'm targeting them. But that's it. That's in the calendar. Remember, of all the marketing, that's the single most important marketing you can ever do right now. Why? What's the number one, after there's a perceived need, what's the number one reason we will pick a product or service? Trust. So if there was only one marketing, that's the only thing you should be doing. And that's why. And we cover how to do it, the content, what needs to be on there, all that stuff. But that should be on your calendar. You should be doing testimonial videos once a month. Now, what do we do with those videos? Well, they should be right on your website, right on the front page of your website. They're uploaded, they're SEO'd. So you got the SEO words, you've got the backlink, you've got the NAP, and you should take that video and syndicate it. See, it's never just a standalone video. You're never just going to make one video and that's it. You're going to repurpose that video. It's going to go to 10, 20, 30 different types of media. Okay, so send the website, and then also you can syndicate with the blog, and we cover how to do this. So you not only can take the video and syndicate it to social media sites, when you do a blog, there's also what's called a blog syndicator. And it's the same thing. We cover how to do that. It goes to 20 different, you do the blog with the video, it goes to 20 different social media sites. It's like a huge spider web, again, with your backlink, your NAP, and your content. All right. So these are all the topics we've been going into in great detail. Now we're going to be going into each one of these at the beginning of the new year. Every one of these in great detail. So we already talked about social media syndicators. We'll be going over into that and a lot more in the future. And then you get into the third marketing categories, which is the cold call advertising. And obviously this is what you want to stay away from if at all possible. This is the last marketing you should ever have to do or want to do. Cost money. You get the worst type of patients. They're the most difficult types of patients. And there's one guarantee with advertising. It's eventually it's guaranteed not to work. So I always look at advertising as cream on the cake, not the cake. All this other stuff we talked about is the cake. So was I okay with getting a few advertising patients? Sure. But it better not have been the majority of my patients. The majority of them, 70% of them, better come from me and what I'm doing. Or you'll have a bad practice. You start getting a lot of cold call patients, you'll have a bad practice. It'll be difficult to manage the people. Your stats won't be good. It won't even be fun because these kind of people aren't even, or they're not even a pleasure to deal with. Okay, so there's Google pay-per-click. So we go into that, the importance of an opt-in and the educational sales series. But we said, remember, there are definitely two things you should be doing on the internet besides as far as paying. Now, the stuff we should be doing on the internet before we don't pay: Google condition videos, insurance videos. Okay. We didn't have to pay for that. But we definitely want to pay for Google pay-per-click for the industry keyword. And obviously, there's a lot to that. We're not getting into it right now, but when it comes to internet marketing, there's two things you definitely want to do when it comes to paying. Number one is you want to do that. You're essentially paying for a patient. That's what you're doing. And now it's even getting better and better because AI, if you haven't noticed, artificial intelligence is making the targeting way, way better. That's what's going on. Yeah, I'm even seeing chiropractic advertising agencies saying, we guarantee you 50 new patients within like there's 60 days or 90 days, something like that. And the reason is because the precision of AI is just unbelievably so much better. Okay, so we walk in and we cover how to do all that, what makes it better, but that should be done. And then it's called billboard advertising. You've seen them before when you go somewhere and then you leave that site and then you see, you go somewhere for a pair of shoes and then you leave the site and then you go to a total different site and there's your pair of shoes. That's called billboard. That's follow-up. That's the follow-up for the keyword. So you always want to do the billboard with the Google pay-per-click. And remember, Google pay-per-click is important because they're looking for a chiropractor. Now, could you do Facebook and Instagram? Sure, you can. And there's a lot of variables you do, and I would test it. But people don't go to Facebook or to Instagram to hire a lawyer or an optometrist or a chiropractor. Okay. And some of these you may want to do a trial and consider it, like Yelp advertising. That's a referral. Again, that shows the importance of referrals. Same with Facebook. You learn how to do it and tweak it. You just keep tweaking it and getting it tighter and tighter to where literally you could only be spending, $20, $30 once a week from 9 a.m. till noon because you got enough information that was your highest probability of when you would get a phone call. See, so you don't have to spend $1,000 and let it run all week. Matter of fact, that would be stupid to do that. That would be stupid to do that. That would be very bad targeting. And then I wouldn't discount the local newspapers that are online. Now I'm only going to pay attention to the subscribers, but I would not discount that. The reason I wouldn't is because a couple of things. One, you have subscribers. I'm paying attention to, in other words, they're reading it. And then the other one is unbelievably inexpensive. So you can very easily and of course, there's rules like anything that increase the effectiveness or decrease the effectiveness of online local newspaper. Same with radio. There's different areas. Now, obviously, if you only have one location, that's not going to be very good. It's not going to be as cost effective. This is why when you have multiple locations, like I had 9 offices in the metro area, radio was really good for us. And then there's certain types of radio that work better, like talk radio. The one that works best is Christian talk radio with call in. You're willing to answer questions. That's the ones that work best. But you got to find out the cost, how far is it going, where you're at. That's why I say if you do radio, probably 80% of it's not even going to be in your geographic radius of draw. So you got to look at the number. What's the cost versus 20%? Because you're going to lose 80%. So, but then when you have multiple offices, all this stuff gets magnified and gets better. That's why these contracted offices I keep talking about, you don't even have to own them. You can just contract with these offices. You're always going to be stronger in everything you do if you're representing multiple offices and it's not just you. And of course, TV. TV is like really inexpensive now, and it's an unbelievable niche. You could really focus in on a very, very narrow demographic, psychographic, geographic niche. But again, if you don't have multiple locations, your chances are it's not going to be very beneficial for you to do. But and then you've got to know the messaging. What kind of messaging is it going to be? So, all right, and then some things make it way more effective than others. So it's, are you on the right demographics, psychographics, geographics? Are you on the right time? Are you on the right day? Are you on the right media? And then what's your message? Are you on the right message? And then what's the best follow-up? So there's a lot of variables that increases the effectiveness of all these things. So, and this is what I call the fourth marketing category. This is the internet. So what should you be doing? You should at least be doing pay-per-click, Google pay-per-click. Again, even if it's only $20, but you're going to use AI, figure out when the calls are coming in, which days, which time of days, and especially the keywords. And that's the only thing you'll do. So you may only be marketing, like I said, you may only spend $20, $30 to do pay-per-click Monday morning from 9 to 12, say. That's being smart because you learned that through AI. Now, that was an analogy. But that's the power of AI. You don't have to spend $1,000 every month. Matter of fact, you don't want to do that and then just be random. Let it just go whenever. That would not be smart. Google Business Maps, local, that's Google Business Profile. That is definitely worth having somebody do that knows what they're doing. There's a lot of variables involved with that. You have to be able to evaluate your competition. What are the links, quantity and quality of backlinks that they have versus you have? That's how they know how to position it. Go, okay, that's where they're at. So this is what we're going to need to do to overcome them. It's a little bit more than in the typical doctor's hands. Now we cover how to do that and all the parameters that are involved. But I'm just saying, even though I know how to do it, if I had a practice, I still would not be doing that. I would still be hiring somebody who was an expert in Google Business Profile. Now, Google pay-per-click's different. You can hire somebody initially that's good at it and set it up, get the AI properly, and then you're done. You don't have to pay them anymore. You use their knowledge just to get all the AI information. So you're done now. Now you're just paying the pay-per-click. See? Okay. There's some potential that's the bare minimum that I'd be doing with the internet. And then there's the internet advertising. If you want to consider doing a podcast where you interview attorneys like medical, legal, live stream, lunch and learns. Man, nowadays it is so easy on, go on your Facebook and do a 20-minute or a 5-minute live stream. Make it consistent. It's like Friday at noon or something like that. And just do a problem solution. Here's a typical problem. Here's, like I told you how you do content, but as a bare minimum, just do a live stream with problem and solution. Stick with the gateways, problem, solution, how you help these gateways. Man, that's really valuable. And then that stays on. And now you can do the Facebook live stream simultaneously as your YouTube. And now it stays on and it's SEO'd. It stays up there forever. Um, so I think you might want to consider that, especially if you want to involve attorneys. Get with an attorney and see if you can get the attorney to do a interview with the attorney. Even if you want to pick one or two attorneys, or even if just one, and do a medical, legal, personal injury podcast and get them to commit for maybe 6 months, and reel off what's 4 times 6, 24 podcast with all the major topics. Because remember, that all stays online after you're done. And you'll win over the attorney. And that's why it also helps if you interview the attorney. Because I'd like to interview you for my medical legal podcast. It's only about 20 minutes, make it 30 minutes. Again, that takes a different person to do that. You got to have some confrontation. You've got to have some communicate. You got to increase your active listening skills, your ability to communicate. You have to have a higher skill level to do these higher skill things. So there's your live stream. We talked about Google pay-per-click and the billboard advertising. You just always want to do the billboard advertising because it's the follow-up, remember? And remember how important follow-up. That's why you always want to capture and follow up anytime you do your advertising. Same with Yelp advertising, Facebook pay-per-click, same thing. You want to try it, but narrow it down, but you want to be aware of all the parameters. You definitely need to do a capture. If you're not even going to do a capture with a follow-up, you're just wasting your money. Some things create a huge significance in the effectiveness of pay-per-click, and that's one of them. Besides using the right keywords, and now with AI, man, it's phenomenal, the precision, because you got to remember Facebook uses 40,000 different data points. Well, AI has access to all of that. And you're just going right to the prime of AI. You're using right to the peak of AI to reverse engineer for your marketing. So you're saving a lot of time and money, and you're significantly increasing the effectiveness of it. And then there's your social medias, whether it's YouTube, Facebook. Remember, YouTube is the second largest search engine. That's why you want to pay attention to these conditions, these insurance, and these condition words. You don't even have to do pay-per-click, but you definitely want all your keywords, your insurance, major medical, personal injury, and condition keywords. You want them all over the internet from YouTube. And then, of course, you want them syndicated to magnify everything. But that's its own little niche, So when you look at your marketing, you got to prioritize. You got limited time and energy. You got to put this on your calendar. Okay, what am I going to do? Well, if you're not willing to do one of the things that's more effective, then you got to drop down the list. Okay, keep dropping down the list until you're willing to do. Drop down the list, meaning something that's not as effective, because it's still better to do something than nothing. Because 8% is a bad number. It's a very bad number. You cannot stay and have a healthy business and a good lifestyle with 8% utilization. And that's all you're limited to. That's going to be a very bad experience in chiropractic. So you want to do your calendar. Have it a plastic calendar, have it for the year. Get your dry erase pencil, start filling it all in, and start training. You're doing every week is training. I always use the example of, what do the NFL players do every day? What do the NBA players? What do the hockey players do? They do the same thing every day. They do the same route, flat route, learn how to tackling positions every day. It's called role play. And they're trying to get it to muscle memory. So if they're doing it and they're getting paid millions, to become excellent and the best at what they do, you think it might be part of you should maybe make it part of your life, role playing? Yeah, role playing just should be a part of your life every week. You're not role playing, chances are you don't have much of a practice. It's all about practicing, role playing. Or you're going to have to spend a lot of money. And then if you spend the money and you don't even know how to keep them, or you don't know how to get business off of them, and I'll finish on this note because this is a real classic example. There was a company called Valpak. They're still around. They send out direct mail in an envelope. It's basically discounts of 20 different businesses in an envelope. It's called Valpak. So, and they'll send it to typically 10,000 households. And it's usually about $600, $800. That's usually what it is. So, and you'll only get 1, 2, no more than 3 patients from that. But this is a classic example. You spend $800 to do the Valpak. Let's say you get 3 new patients, but you don't know how to keep patients. Let's say you don't know how to keep patients and they're gone in 3 visits. So that's 3, 6, 9, $50 a visit. That's $450. And you spent $800. You can't do it again. Now, let's say you not only know how to keep them, you know how to get 1.5 referrals off of them. So you get 3. So in my case, I would get 3. So out of those 3, I'm going to get 1.5 from each one of them. So that's going to be another 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to end up with at least 8 new patients, at least, because I'm going to get their mother, father, brother, sister. Okay. And then my patient retention is 28. 8 times 8, 64, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So 28. So I've got 224 visits off that same dollar amount. And you go 224 visits, 224 times 50 is $11,000. So I spent $800, got 3 new patients, was able to create 5 more from them. I was able to keep them for 28 visits because my knowledge and skill at a $50 per visit. So I made $11,000. The chiropractor who didn't know how to keep them, they stayed for 3 visits each and left. He didn't know how to get referrals. So he made $450. So he spent $800 and he only made back $450. That's the chiropractor seeing 20, 30, 40 visits a week. That's the guy who doesn't know what he's doing. I'm doing the Valpak every time. I'm going to give them $800 the next time for 1, 2, or 3 patients because I know I'm going to get 2, 3, or 4, and I'm going to get them to stay. So out of that $800, I made $11,000, roughly $10,000 profit, and the other chiropractor's going broke. What's the difference? The difference is knowledge and skill. That's the difference. That's what this industry is. When you have 8% utilization, you either learn how to do it, you do it, and you become wealthy and you do well, or you never learn how to do it and you struggle the rest of your life, seeing 60, 80 patient visits a week. That's the difference. The market's there. Whether you have the knowledge and skill to access the market is the question. So go ahead and take a look at your calendar. Buy it. Don't put it in your computer where you'll never look at it again. Don't hide it in a drawer. It should go right on your wall. You should see it every day. And you make the marketing calendar out for the year. You don't go month to month going, I wonder what I'm going to do now. That's not how you do it. What happens when you do that is that's when you get sold. That's when somebody calls you and you get sold. And next thing you know, you're over here and you're over here and you're over here. You're chasing your ass. And I'd say easily 80% of the chiropractors chase their ass. They don't have the systems in place. They don't train for them and they don't go get them. I'd say that's easily 80% of the chiropractors. That's the difference it makes. So fill out your calendar, train on it, get your office involved, put systems in place. You can't do all of this at once. You got to start with the checklist. And that's why I say every month you should at least finish and put in place one marketing system. One. You should be done. And if you're in others, if you're working on the insurance videos, you should be totally done in 30 days. You're working on your condition videos, you should be totally done in 30 days. Not have to go back, not drag it on, not get stuck in the weeds, not have to do two or three things and none of them are getting done now. That's a good way not to have any kind of a practice or any kind of a lifestyle. No, you get them done. There's deadlines and you get them done. And then you go to and then they start building. So this starts working for you. Then this starts working for you. Then this starts working for you. And it starts adding up, getting to be a snowball. And that's how your practice just keeps building and building, going into overdrive until you've got all your systems in place. You know how to create more patients than you physically can handle. Then you go, okay, let's learn the next system, how to hire, train, and manage associate doctor to leverage my time and money. And that's when the real quality of life skyrockets.